Thank you very much. Every time it comes up how many people who have criminal convictions that have been arrested by ICE, I think you hear Democrats saying, we have no problem with ICE arresting and focusing on criminals. But that's not what we're seeing. And in fact, last Rules meeting, I pointed out that Obama has actually deported more immigrants than we've seen under Trump. But what he did was go after those who actually had criminal convictions. And we hear of the same two examples coming out of Minnesota. But we've heard them boast that maybe they've arrested 10,000 people in Minnesota under this surge. Even under their own records and a Fox News analysis of this and a Cato News analysis of this, at the most, it's 5% of the people arrested have any kind of criminal conviction. I'm very concerned about, and Chairman Cole, you and I share this. I'm concerned about the fact that there were 4 Oglala Sioux tribal members arrested. I don't know if you are aware of that case. And there's been a Navajo man arrested in Arizona. He offered to give them his tribal ID. He offered to give them his CIB. Now, Chairman Cole, how many people know what a CIB is? What is it?
Not many, probably you and me.
What is it?
Oh, it's a designation of your tribal blood quantum.
Right. And if you have tribal blood quantum, you're a federally recognized member of a federally recognized Indian tribe, are you a citizen of the United States?
Yes.
You're a citizen of the United States. And should you be required to walk around as a citizen of the United States with your tribal ID and your identification of blood quantum so that you don't get arrested and detained and thrown into a detention center?
I would not think so.
You would not think so. Should a citizen be required to walk around with their birth certificate or passport to avoid being arrested and thrown in a detention center?
No?
No. But that is happening over and over again. And that is the problem that Democrats have with this bill. And that is the problem that Democrats have with what Trump is doing. Because they arrested that Navajo man. And you and I know this because he was brown. They arrested him because of what he looked like. They arrested the Oglala Nation Sioux people because of what they look like, the color of their skin. And that is absolutely not right. It is a violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of who we are as a people. And that's what our problem is with this bill. And I don't see anything in here that provides any constraints on ICE to not keep doing this. Is there anything in here, Ranking Member, that constrains ICE from not arresting citizens?
On that particular issue, no. We fought to have that included in the bill, but that was rejected. And I would repeat, I think that rejection did not come from the subcommittee or from the full committee, but I believe it came from a higher place, including the White House and Stephen Miller, who has a different view. I mean, I believe that we all are in agreement that U.S. citizens should not be detained and deported, nor should they have to walk around carrying your birth certificate, your passport. I have a grandson who was, that we adopted when he was 8 months old. He is from Guatemala, and he is an American citizen. And today, at age 18, to be very honestly, I've called him, I spoke to him, and I said, please, Teo, carry your passport with you. Carry your information with you. Because I'm concerned, and I'm afraid, that they would just see him and see the color of his skin, he's brown, and that he would say, and I say that with all, with a lot of emotion. So I think that's where we need to have red lines and boundaries and accountability and guarantees that really help to make a difference when you are trying, in fact, to look at criminals. I don't have a problem with, people have a criminal reputation, a criminal background, and that was one of the issues with regard to a warrant for a person. But to be just willy-nilly and just a dragnet of picking up people because of the profiling and what they look like is un-American, and it does not speak to the values of this great nation.
The Navajo individual, he said when he offered to get them the tribal ID and the CIB, he said, you must be stealing someone's identity, and we would get your family next. And then this is the words of the Navajo individual. I was treated as if we haven't earned our place here. This is our place. This is beyond racism. They hate us like we were pests and rodents in their home. But this is our home, and always has been. And I think it's this concept of who they are. And I'm looking over at Mr. Scott, and in that big, beautiful bill, we authorized to give $500,000 to 8 senators just because they had their telephone records disclosed. And he was against that. But what we have over at ICE is they have no accountability, and they're saying we have absolute immunity. And when you think you have absolute immunity, you are no consequences. And when there are no consequences, this is the kind of stuff they do. Over and over, 170 citizens, Mr. Chairman, as of October. That's not just the ones in the latest surge. Why aren't we giving them the ability to get compensation when they've been detained, when they've been arrested, when they've been shot and killed? This is what is wrong with what is happening with ICE. It's the idea of accountability and reform. And that's what we are complaining about up here. Not about the few individuals that should be arrested, detained, and deported. We don't have a problem with that. We have the problem with the fact that they are going after anybody who they think.
And transparency.
Transparency. And then we don't know, right? And then the whole idea that they can stop you for protesting, for exercising your right to protest, to film. Why should you get shot in the face because you're filming ICE? Why should anybody get shot in the face? And there's actually protocols. There are protocols that are ICE's own protocols that they're not supposed to be doing what they're doing, but they're ignoring that. They're ignoring court orders because they think there is no accountability. And that's our problem, that there is no accountability built into this legislation. Now, the last Democrats, or I always like to vote, Mr. Chair, I know I gave you some time, but I always like to give our ranking member, is there anything else you'd like to add to the?
Well, the emphasis is on the Homeland Security bill, in which I laid out a whole lot of issues. I think there were several pieces of which we can point to that have to do with Coast Guard, that have to do with FEMA, that have to do with a TSA, and that are good pieces and are improvements to the bill. I think what unfortunately has happened is that the ICE issue, as it has unfolded, has created a specter of fear, of anger, I was to say detention of, there's a young man who's 21 years old, he was interviewed, a rubber bullet has hit him in the eye, and he now is blind in one eye. He was, standing with the protesters, but he wasn't doing anything violent, but he was shot at, and now for the rest of his life, he's blind in one eye. And the woman who was killed, the people you talk about being detained, there has to be guardrails. And we tried. And I think that there was, and quite frankly, there's some good things. We did not succeed in that portion of the bill in order to place the accountability, the enforcement, the transparency that you've spoken about. and leaving, in my view, at risk U.S. citizens, leaving at risk people who are here, who are now frightened to leave their homes, frightened to go out, frightened to, to move for fear that they will be detained. And again, if somebody has a criminal record and a deportation order and so forth, well, my God, move forward, move forward. But that is not what we see is happening. And to say that the agents are immune from any kind of investigation or any kind of, that is, again, is not the American way. And it isn't true, I would say this to Mrs. Fishback, that every Democrat thinks that ICE and doesn't realize, that, hey, amongst all groups, there are people who who breach the law, breach the wall, just, go beyond what they should be doing. That needs to be considered in this regard. And that is what we are asking with regard to this bill. But again, I think we tried to move forward on a bill and leave people. I think everyone has to pay a close attention to what is in the bill, what they can view as positive or negative, and come to a conclusion about where they want to be on the bill. It is complicated when you're both trying to govern and you're trying to resist what may be infringements, that to thread that needle and to try to be able to move forward in a way. But I think the examples, I don't think that there's any doubt in anyone's mind, particularly in the minds of the American people, that something has gone awry here, that this is bad. This is not.
Yeah, we should
what
not
the
be having 32 people die in
died, or
detention.
6 people died in December in custody. There's something very, very wrong. But what is more wrong, I believe, is an inability to say, okay, let's examine it. Let's look at it. Let's shine a light on it. Let's fix it, because we need to be looking at who is illegal and who's coming across and who's a criminal and so forth. But we need to make sure that American citizens and people who are here legally and who have not transgressed have the sense and that feeling that, when you express what the Navajo man said, that they are not to be disposed of. They are not be considered of who they are and what their contribution is to this nation. That's wrong. And that is not who the American people are. I don't believe that they support that kind of effort. Do they want to be safe? Yes. Is it our responsibility to make them feel safe? Yes. But it's not our responsibility. It is our responsibility to make sure that they are safe.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member. And I would note that a majority of Americans believe that you can be now, are worried, not believe, are worried that they could get arrested even though they're citizens. We should not live in that kind of fear. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.